Ames Property Maintenance Appeals Board to order. May we have the roll call, please?
Engelmann,
Here.
Sullivan,
Here.
Dillaboo,
Here.
Freilich.
Here. And the opening statement. The Property Maintenance Appeals Board is a quasi-judicial board created by the City of Ames. The board's purpose is to decide appeals as provided for in the city's rental housing ordinance. As a board of the city, we welcome all testimony. We make our decisions based on the facts and evidence as allowed under city code and presented in open meeting. Testimony before the board must be given under oath or affirmation. If the proceedings become lengthy, we may ask that testimony be focused on new facts or evidence not already presented. When you are testifying, please address your remarks to the board. The Property Maintenance Appeals Board is an independent volunteer board of citizens. We are not part of the city administration. We are served in our efforts by Recording Secretary Natalie Riegmeyer, Building Official Sarah Van Meteren, Housing Inspectors Holly McDonald, Dan Thomas, and Noah Kuehl, Assistant City's Attorney Vicki Feilmeyer and Jane Chang. The order of proceedings for each application will be as follows. First, an oral statement summarizing the issues and procedural steps will be presented by the staff. Second, testimony and evidence will be presented by the applicant. Third, testimony may be heard from any members of the audience who wish to speak in support of or in opposition to the appeal. Next, the board will give the staff and the applicant an opportunity to present concluding summaries and arguments. And finally, the board will discuss the issues and evidence and come to a decision. So that's who we are, where we are, what we're doing. We have the minutes from the last meeting, which was December 5th of 2024. Any questions or comments on the minutes? I hear a motion to approve the minutes.
I move to approve the minutes.
I second the motion.
All in favor, say aye.
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 The minutes have been approved. Old business? None. New business? We have two appeals this afternoon. The first one is the appeal of section 13.503, parenthesis 1, close parenthesis, dwelling unit height and area requirements at 122 High Avenue. And I believe I have a short correction there. I think that's 122 High Street. That's what it says on the street sign.
Yep.
Yeah, okay. All right. May we hear from the city?
Yep. PowerPoint, sorry about the date on it. We are in March. It might not feel like it, but we are. 122 High. The current owners purchased the property in October of 2024. The inspection to become a rental was done in July, noting that the structure had one compliant bedroom. We did previously have it registered as a rental in 2021. At that time, the inspection also noted one compliant bedroom and was clear that the upstairs could not be used for sleeping purposes. The owner was made aware of the bedroom restriction through the rental code this December, and that set the date for the appeal. So the designation of one bedroom contradicts the assessor's count and the real estate listing. So we've had several instances here where we know that we don't use the same criteria that the assessor does. And so it was listed based on the assessor's count, not what complies with rental code. So that can be misleading. The code standard is there. You have that in your packet, so I won't go through it all. There's lots of numbers. Essentially, they need 7 feet of ceiling height, and the upstairs area does not have that. There's the actual listing photo and then kind of a diagram that our staff came up with dimensions to help show that the highest point never reaches the minimum of 7 feet. And then it slopes, and there's measurements. We have to measure what's at 5 feet or above. So the rest of that area doesn't really count. If the area did reach, if the ceiling height did reach 7 feet at some point, we could count the square footage that is at 7 feet, but in this instance, nothing reaches 7 feet. The appeal was filed 1/15, saying specific fixed conditions make strict compliance impracticable. Again, we put the definition of impracticable in there for you. The section just in what the appellant submitted, I just want to highlight that the prior approvals shall continue is where the minimum ceiling height came in, where we could authorize that. This is not a prior approval. There's no record of it ever being approved as a bedroom. So it doesn't meet that standard. Here are your alternatives. You can affirm the decision that strict compliance is not impracticable. That would prohibit the upstairs from being used as a bedroom. If you think that strict compliance is impracticable, the upstairs would be able to be used as a bedroom. Remember, you can't just waive it. You can't just say, well, we don't think it should apply in this situation. You have to find that it's impracticable to not be able to use the upstairs as a sleeping area with a ceiling height of 6 feet 7 inches. Questions? The appellant, if you're interested and ready to hear from them, they're on Zoom. So we have both appellants Zooming in at this meeting. So Kevin, I believe, is on Zoom and can speak if and when you're ready.
Yeah, I'm here. Appreciate y'all taking the time, and thanks for that overview. That was good. It hit most of the points. I actually have a measurement of 6'8" on the ceiling.
Before you get started, there's a requirement. If you're giving testimony, you must be sworn in. Would you please be sworn in?
Yeah, for sure.
Do you swear to tell the truth?
Yes, I swear.
Go ahead.
Okay, so yes, thank you for that that overview. That was good. My measurements, I actually had it at 6'8" and actually 6'9" on the other side, but I believe I heard you say 6'7". So that might be a little bit of discrepancy. And actually in this appeal, I probably should have referenced section 13.401 instead of, I understand that the one I referenced is a prior approval section of the code, which probably doesn't make sense, obviously, because it wasn't priorly approved. So I think more of what I'm looking for is a board variance or an administration appeal on this, whichever one makes more sense. I do understand that the required height is 7 foot. This is a few inches short, but has the adequate space, the adequate light, the adequate ventilation. The minimum floor, if you're counting, at 6'8", it has the minimum space before the room slopes off to the sides. I also understand that the assessor and real estate listings don't really fall in line with the rental housing code, which I may have been a little bit unaware of at the purchase of this house. But taking this house from a 2-bedroom to a 1-bedroom impacts my occupancy at this listing pretty significantly. It's I think it doesn't cause any safety or potential hazards to people at that height. I'm 6'5" and I've stayed there a couple of times up in that room, and it's quite spacious and can move around pretty freely. So that's what I'm looking for, is just some approval on that if it can be done. Yeah, I guess that's really all that I have to say. I see that spaces can be approved with beams that are 6'6" coming down on 4 foot spacings, which seems more of a hazard than a flat roof at 6'8" or even 6'7", what she said. So that's what I'm looking for, is approval at that 6'8" height for that upstairs bedroom.
Questions, comments from the board?
I have a question.
Yep.
Sorry, not for, well, actually, does the room have a window?
It does, yes. Do you guys have the staff report?
It's
Yes,
right.
The window is
It's-
in another
Yeah,
photograph.
from there,
right?
The camera is actually in front of the window.
Oh, I see.
Okay. Yeah, I posted a few pictures from one direction and then the other direction. The height I measured at 6'8", and then the room as it was set up with a bed in it.
Oh, I see.
Well, the question seems to be, is that a functional height and is this a functional bedroom? I'd be interested in knowing what the other board members think about that.
Make sure you speak into the mics because that's.
Oh, excuse me. Sorry.
I guess I have a
Yeah,
question.
I can hear you.
Good.
I guess I have a question for the city, if I can ask a question. Is the height have to do with the ability of smoke if there was a fire? Is that
Yes.
why the height is 7 feet?
Yes.
Yes.
The answer there was yes.
Okay.
I mean, fundamentally, right, our which is why it feels like a sticky situation, but we cannot change, right, the codes of the city.
That is correct.
And so, I mean,
We can rule it's impracticable to enforce them.
I think it's easier to talk about the practicability when we're talking about, you know, curb lips being like an inch off or something, right? Like, in this situation, you know, it's not like we say this bedroom isn't functional and it becomes that this house then has no bedrooms, right? Like, you know,
Well, it has one bedroom downstairs.
right. That's what I'm saying is like, you know, it can remain a rental in that
Yeah,
situation.
just to point out too, the dimensions of that room is 20 foot by 11. So it's a large area that basically becomes unusable. It's
I will say,
kind of a waste. The house was built in 1900, so raising or getting any more space, you know, on the top is not doable.
thank you. Yeah. So I will say, if this were my personal home and I was choosing whether or not to make this a bedroom, I would have no problem with that. But that's not the case. You're choosing to make this into a rental property. Again, that is a business decision. And when you choose to do that, you have a responsibility to follow the rules that apply to a business. And so I will say, I think a couple of things. In my opinion, based on the facts here, I don't see anything that seems to be outside the realm of strict adherence. To me, it seems like the code is fairly clear. That being said, this is more for the city. I think like 75% of the appeals that we've heard since I've been on this board are due to the fact that there's deviation in the codes across these various standards. I'm sure there is a reason for that. I don't know what it is. I would be curious if there's ever been an attempt at harmonization or explanation for that. But again, it is ultimately the responsibility of the landlord to make sure that they understand the rules and are following them.
Right.
But it does seem to me like we have a challenge here where we have a lot of people not understanding the rules around rental. And so I think that we do need to improve how we are making that known to people.
By deviation from the code, you mean the difference in how rental views it versus the assessor?
Yes.
Yeah, she's right. We've heard, I mean,
I
and
agree.
the problem for us with your petition is we have heard many, like she said, exactly the same. And it's like with the exact same situation that you're in. And so we have turned this down multiple times for other people. And then if we say yes to you, then it sets a precedent for people going forward. Well, why did we say yes to you and we don't say yes to the next
That is
person
correct. It does.
in the
set precedent.
same situation?
Yeah, no, I understand that. I agree. I've seen some of the other cases and some of them were like vaulted ceilings, you know, that don't have any of that flat room at the top, you know, which I get it. It's hard for you guys to say one way or the other. But it just, you know, it makes the whole room unusable. That is very usable.
Right.
And in the code, you know, it says approval can be given, if it doesn't affect the safety or health of the renters or the leasers, which I don't see how it would affect that. Especially when there's terms written in there where you can have beams that run across that 6'6". That seems even more of a hazard than a flat roof at 6'8".
I mean, at the end of the day, and I apologize that this is the way it is, Mr. Hanson, but like my understanding is that we are welcome to make recommendations to the city council about modifying code, but we are here to decide on the practicability clause alone.
Well,
That is our,
we also have the ceiling itself, which is 6'8" at the highest point, 4 inches under code. But no one has mentioned the sharply sloping majority of the ceiling there. And I'm glad this picture is up. I was going to request that because it looks like a perfectly wonderful bedroom. But you have to keep in mind, bedrooms are often used by people who are not fully alert. And I would say the first thing you would do after sleeping in that bed all night is wake up and bang your head on the ceiling every morning.
Well, no, you adjust yourself for that.
After the first few times.
I've lived in this hotel, yeah, you get used to
Well, I hope you don't sleep there then.
Is this a year-long rental, or are you using it as an Airbnb or what?
This is an Airbnb,
Yeah.
yes. And before, the previous owners had hundreds of reviews, with
Mhm.
all very good reviews. I mean, it's a very nice house. It was redone very well for being
It's a
a
nice house.
1900s built, but
Yeah, I had the same issue you had. I had an Airbnb 1928 house with the exact same issue you had, and we had to make that like a office desk area, like extra sitting room type of thing, because we couldn't use it as a bedroom either.
Yeah.
Which people did appreciate because they could get away from, other people in the house. So, I mean, you could market it that way, but I understand the loss of a bedroom is, that's a big deal.
Is that a door on the back wall there?
That's the window.
That's the window.
No, the window is behind us.
I don't think,
I was wondering that too, where the door is.
I think it's where.
No, it's on the side by the window.
The door is on the side by the window.
Yeah, it
I was
comes-
wondering if
So
you
the
turn the
stairs.
bedroom around and put the bed against that back wall, eliminates the sloping ceiling when you wake up in the morning.
I think,
Would that be more practical?
I think ultimately the
Yeah.
room arrangement is not
Yeah.
what we need to decide on. It's the entirety of the situation, which again, from my perspective, it is unfortunate. I recognize you've made an investment on information that you believed to be pertinent and true, and unfortunately doesn't have bearing in this. So I feel like it's clear from my perspective.
I agree. I mean, to the point where I would be ready to make a motion.
I second.
You need to make a motion first.
Yeah, I'll make the formal motion.
I'm ready to make.
So my motion would be to uphold the inspector's decision on 122 High Street.
I second.
Discussion? Well, I think it's a shame too. I've been by it and it is a nice house. But that really is not a functional bedroom. It's not safe. And I agree with the ongoing problems. The assessor has one code, the city has another code. And then you have the estate agent who's just trying to sell the house. Of course, he thinks it's a bedroom. And it looks like a bedroom, but I don't think it functions as a bedroom.
Maybe after we finish the business portion of this meeting, while we're still in session, we could talk about wanting to draft a letter to the council if we would like to have them consider certain changes for us, something like that.
But I think now we have
For now,
A
yeah, we have
vote
a
on
motion
the
on the
motion.
table, so.
Yeah.
a motion and a second, so.
All those in favor?
I,
All those against? The motion is carried. Affirming the city's take on this. Excuse me for the imprecise language.
Computer's frozen. I'm trying to get to the alternatives page.
You also need to read that the decision can be appealed in district court 30 days from filing. That's just a general statement.
Where is that?
Just to know.
Small.
Sorry.
Really big job, I know.
It's not written in the opening statement.
No, it's not.
So it's
So it's just that any decision made by this board can be appealed within 30 days of the filing of the decision in order.
As I was about to say. Thank you very much. Yeah, if you did not hear that, the decision can be appealed within 30 days. To which court?
The district.
District court.
The district court.
Mr. Hanson, you will get emailed a copy of that decision in order when it happens.
Okay, sounds good.
All right, then we're on to the second appeal, appeal of section 13.506, parenthesis 4, parenthesis E, in parenthesis IV, in parenthesis, occupancy for dwelling units in near campus neighborhoods. This one in the house at 3424 Woodland concerns.
Okay, just a point of clarification on your agenda, it states 13504. It is 13503.
Oh, it is 503.
So 3424 Woodland, initial inspection was done in January of this year. We identified 5 compliant bedrooms at that time. In 2021, only 2 compliant bedrooms were identified. There was a note on the inspection at that time that stated an area in the basement and then potentially 2 areas in the upstairs could be used as bedrooms if permits were obtained to make the appropriate changes to create habitable living spaces. This property is in a capped neighborhood. So with occupancy, they can increase the number of bedrooms, but they cannot increase the number of occupants. So at 2 compliant sleeping areas, they would have been allowed 3 total adult occupants. Creating the 3 additional living spaces does not increase the number of occupants they're allowed, but they are using it as if it did. The information on the checklist from the city was a bit misleading. It stated that they were over-occupied unless they could fix these issues. The owner did resolve the issues, pulled the permits, did everything the way we would want them to do it. And that occupancy conversation must have never been had. So here we are with a house with 5 bedrooms that legally can only have 3 adults. The code section and appeal criteria, same thing, strict compliance with the code is impracticable. They were misled by the inspection notes, thought they were doing the right thing, and think that it would be impracticable to, after putting all that money in, thinking they're doing the right thing, to not be able to utilize the property to its full capacity. Alternatives, you can deny the appeal, finding that strict compliance is not impracticable. This would keep it at 3 adult occupants. You can grant the appeal if strict compliance is impracticable. This would allow the occupancy to increase to match the 5-bedroom count. And then you can modify the decision. Again, I'm not totally sure what that looks like, but if you want to try to get creative, we'll see if something works. So those are your alternatives. Do you have any questions for me?
I just want to reaffirm a statement that was made, is that I don't know how your software works on your side when you're doing these inspections, because I see the note on the inspection worksheet right here, over occupied unless bedrooms can be created. I am understanding how the owner got confused by that.
Mm-hmm.
Does the software spit that out no matter what? Is it an accidental click by a building official? I'm just kind of curious how we ended up effectively stating to the owner that hey, you can fix this, just do this thing, and try to figure out how we got here, right?
Yeah, I think based on where it is in the checklist, it was pretty intentional. It's not like it was
Okay.
an internal note or something that was used for staff that got put on the checklist. I think that it was put there intentionally as the mistake.
Mhm.
I don't know what happened. The person that did it is no longer with us.
Yeah.
So I can't speak to what the thought process was, but this was kind of new, and we did have some confusing things going on with capped neighborhoods and all of that. around this time frame. So it could have been some confusion. It could have just been a total lapse of memory, and we wrote it down. And then that triggered the permits.
But it
So
was not a default field, is the,
correct.
Okay.
Yep.
And is it correct to say, as a result of the owner's activities, there was a compliance certificate issued?
Yes. So they issued the LOC based on the 2 bedrooms. The permits were obtained after the letter of compliance was issued.
Say that again?
The LOC was issued and then the permits were obtained but in the next inspection, I believe, or very close in time. So they didn't pull the permits to create the sleeping areas. They resolved the occupancy issue.
And how many bedrooms was that at that time?
2.
It was only 2.
But they were.
Not to
ordered
correct,
to-
but it was a 3-bedroom house. I added 2 bedrooms to it.
to resolve the occupancy
Yes,
flag in 2021.
So are you counting the basement bedroom?
yes. So there's 2 on the main floor, 2 in the upstairs, and then there's 1 in the basement.
Yep. So for us, the basement bedroom at the time of inspection didn't meet the criteria because it was too near a mechanical area. So they had to do some work to the mechanical to separate that from the bedroom. So we didn't count it at that time.
Okay. Don't want to
Yeah,
discourage your
Must have been one of
participation,
the
but before
must have
you
been one of the
testify,
upstairs bedrooms.
I
There
understand,
was one of,
sir, I understand that it's probably hard since you're phoning in, but the board will let you know when it's your turn to present, and that is not now, okay?
okay, yes.
So question was, so they added 2 bedrooms to the upper, like a second level of, and that was an option at the time of the inspection, or only adding a room in the basement?
No, so they added 1 upstairs and they created the separation between the mechanical and the basement to create the second one downstairs.
And they already had 2. Now they have 5, right?
They have 2 on the main floor and they had 1 upstairs.
Oh, and they're, but it was considered a 2-bedroom. Why wasn't
I
the one
don't-
upstairs counted?
So that inspection report was done by a different inspector who's no longer here. I don't know. So it would have been an existing 3-bedroom house. And they created an additional bedroom upstairs with permits and an additional bedroom in the basement with permits.
But the one that was upstairs, we don't know why it wasn't
It
counted
wasn't noted
initially.
on there. It just says 2 main floor bedrooms. Not sure if the typing got deleted or forgotten or not sure.
Or it's possible at that time it didn't have a smoke detector, low ceiling height, something else too, that where we wouldn't have considered it a bedroom. So even with that bedroom, they would have been able to have 3 adult occupants.
Right.
So a 1, 2, or 3 bedroom house can have a maximum of 3.
okay.
Should we move on to testimony?
I'd like to get this cleared up. I'm thoroughly confused. Was this based upon the 2022 compliance certificate? Or was this after the compliance certificate was issued, these changes were made? Could you speak up?
I'm not 100% sure on the timeline. So the
Right.
inspection identified that there were not enough bedrooms. Permits were obtained. I thought I recalled that the permits were obtained and completed after the issuance of the LOC, but it could be that they were completed prior to the issuance of the letter of compliance.
Okay, we'll just go on from there then. Is
Here's
that the city's president? Go ahead.
Oh, we do have the letter of,
There is.
of 2022. We
Of
have the letter of
2022,
compliance on there.
We're looking up the date for the permits. Just a second.
Yeah.
No. I'm more interested in the date of the work than the date of the permit. I think we can find that fairly easily.
What do you mean by the date of the work?
How many bedrooms was that permit issued for? Sounds like it was issued for 2. So was the work of the additional bedrooms done afterward? Or,
I think now's a great time to bring in the testimony of the owner, that way we can
Right.
ask this question.
well, if the city, is that the city's case? Let's go on to the testimony of the owner. Sorry to have interrupted you earlier, but before you can testify, can you hear me?
Yes,
Before you can testify, you need to be sworn in. It's very simple. Do you swear to tell the truth?
I do.
Go ahead.
Okay. I'll apologize. My voice is a little scratchy. I attended the Iowa State game on Tuesday night, the double overtime defeat, but I was close to court and I was rather vocal. So I'll apologize if my voice is not very robust. So
For one reason or
I'm
another,
not.
I think everybody's voice is scratchy these days.
So, yeah, currently, again, my name is Brent. I reside in Ankeny. My daughter was graduating from Iowa Central, moving to Ames. I'm not really a landlord. I'm not a property owner. I just bought this house for my daughter and her friends to live in 2020. 2021, the city came and said I was overoccupied. So Natalie Harrington came through, did the inspection and said, it's a 3-bedroom house. There was 2 on the main floor, 1 in the upstairs. That if I wanted to have 5 people, I needed to add 2 bedrooms, so I did a separation in the basement between the mechanical and that living space, and then built a wall on the upstairs.
One question there. When was that done? What year was that
That would
done?
have been in summer of 2021, summer to fall.
I see.
So I pulled the permits, had all the inspections done. Natalie came back through and said, yep, the rooms are good. All of your inspections, the smoke detectors, all the things she asked me to correct. And we moved on. So the one thing that I asked for an extension on is the stormwater in the basement was going to sanitary. To get to code, you have to actually have it go to storm. So I just paid the $7,000 plumbing bill to put in the sump and to pump to the storm sewer. So I've got about $25,000 invested in this property with the understanding that I could have 5 renters. Both of my children have graduated and moved on. Right now I have non-family members living there. Next year I have my nephew's an Iowa State student. He wants to live there. And then 2 years later, my niece is going to Iowa State. So I wasn't planning on being a landlord. It kind of fell in my lap that, to help out my niece and nephew, I was going to own it until 2030. And then I don't really aspire to be a landlord. But it is, from an investment standpoint, with only 3 renters, it costs me more to maintain the house than I would get in rent. So it's not practical for me to keep the house. Again, going off of Natalie and the inspectors that came into the house, everything seemed to be fine. Add these 2 bedrooms, get it permitted, and there's no challenge. When Holly came through and after the inspection and said that there was some 2018 decision or some change to your policy, again, 3 years before Natalie inspected the property, I wasn't aware of that, nor would I have made the investment had I known that it was a 3-person max. So that's kind of where I'm at. Feel like I'm kind of stuck here with a lot of, again, I know, is Holly in the room?
Yes, I'm here.
Okay, so I know Holly's made the comment, this is one of the nicer rentals she's walked through in quite some time. That was her comment, just the condition of the house and the way that tenants currently maintain it. I'm very proud of that property. I mean, I've done landscaping, the curb appeal is, I would say, excellent. And the tenants that live there, it's a very nice property. I'd like to keep it, again, for 5 or 6 years, if we can get past this. If not, I guess I'm probably gonna have to move it back to a single family home and sell it. That's kind of my only options as I sit here today.
Thank you for your testimony, Brent.
Thank you. And I included a picture of the curb view of that. You can see I've done a bunch of rock and landscaping. We got a little fire pit in the back for the tenants, and got a new roof on it, new downspouts, new shutters. I'm very proud of the house. I'll say it that way.
Just taking a look between inspection, sorry, I guess before we get on to discussion, basically. Eric.
Any comment, discussion from the board? Go ahead.
So I looked at the inspection, June 2nd, 2021, cert was issued Feb 4, 2022. That's an 8-month gap. Seems about right to be able to pull permits. Looks like permits pulled during that time. We've got that. Okay. Cool. So yeah, I think timeline wise, everything's in order.
So question for the city, with the letter of compliance that was issued, it's just the LOC, it doesn't say how many bedrooms or anything like that?
So I just found a
Later.
comment on the checklist at that time for the final inspections, and it says 2 main floor bedrooms, 2 second floor bedrooms, and 1 basement bedroom. So they were acknowledged as
Those
bedrooms
Okay,
after the permits were pulled.
okay. So that 2022 letter of compliance was for 5 bedrooms.
5 bedrooms. Yep. But again, bedrooms can be increased, occupancy cannot.
Right.
I'll start by saying I have quite a bit of sympathy here. Because if I got a letter of compliance,
Mhm.
or if I got my report,
Right,
said just resolve this and you fix your occupancy problem.
right.
That's a.
And there is no reference to this 2018 statute in the certificate that was issued.
Correct.
Right. So has anything changed due to actions of the homeowner that would invalidate the compliance permit? I don't think so. I haven't heard anything.
No, everything's been completed for the rental inspection, even pending the appeal. The only remaining item would be occupancy.
So if you issued one compliance permit based on 5 bedrooms, what's to prevent issuing a second if nothing is?
So sometimes, just because there was an error in it doesn't mean that it's legal. So if we miss something at an inspection and it's not caught, it doesn't mean that it's okay to move forward that way. It does have to be corrected. So your decision here is it impracticable
Mhm.
to keep them from having 5 occupants and adhering to the occupancy ordinance?
And the only reason that this is I shouldn't say only, this is a unique situation because of the neighborhood it is in.
Correct.
Correct, yes.
In any other part of Ames, this would not
Right.
be an issue for us today. I do personally have ties to that because I grew up in a neighborhood that is protected by one of those occupancy
Yeah.
caps. So I recognize the reason those exist. That being said, this situation does seem really, really awful to me, that they've invested a lot of money, clearly done it exactly how you would want someone to do
Right.
when they're investing in a property.
When we think about that definition of impracticability,
Right.
right? It's that in a contract,
Right,
it's like, you can't hold up your factor of circumstance because they can't hold up their side of the duty without extreme and unreasonable difficulty,
right,
but that ship sailed. The second we said, yeah, just go fix it by creating bedrooms,
right.
that was the undue burden. So I would be strongly in favor of calling this impracticable, just to level set where I'm at.
I have 2 points. One is 100% seemingly homeowner compliance with everything that was asked.
There's obvious desire
Right.
to follow to the letter and spirit of the law.
And while I am not a lawyer, it seems to me that issuing the certificate of compliance creates a precedent which opens the door for a variance.
My question now is, so how do we make this, if we, as a board, rule impracticability? I'm unclear as to how we then say that this can be the situation going forward and how we put the parameters around that as well.
For this specific property?
This specific property. Because let's say this person sells this property.
Right.
I likewise think that it would be fair to continue allowing the occupancy at the increased level. I do not know how we
Right.
judge that for the purposes of capturing that decision.
I
I
think
would
you would
say
just
you
put
would-
in your motion
Go
that it would have, it has a total of 5 bedrooms and could be allowed 5 adult occupants in perpetuity.
If we were to find this impracticable, I think it would apply only to this property
Oh,
and
yes,
not throughout the city because of the,
we can't.
Individuals.
We don't have the authority to do any more than that.
Right.
So,
yes.
okay, well, I get the feeling that this board fairly unanimously feels a certain way. So do we feel like we're ready to start making motions?
Would someone like to make a motion?
I will make a motion that for the purposes of the property at 3424 Woodland Avenue, that we find the occupancy limit to be impracticable, and we would allow 5 adult occupants for perpetuity, as long as a continuous letter of compliance is held.
I don't like the limitation at all.
Okay, yes.
Yeah.
Tell us more.
I mean, I think, is this not normal that once they make the decision, as long as letter of compliance is still valid, it transfers when the ownership transfers, does it not? Yeah,
Yeah, so the only concern would be is if they did remove it from a rental, as a rental, removed it from rental registration and came back on. If we went by the code, we would say what was in place in 2018, and that would be the 3 bedrooms. So they would lose
I don't
those
think
5.
that's their role, though. I mean, if any other owner, right, drops their letter of compliance for whatever reason, right, nobody's guaranteed that you're ever gonna get one again, right? You still have to comply.
And to be clear, I was trying to say, I don't want that
Exactly.
situation.
Right, I understand what the intention is here,
Mhm.
but I think your average buyer should know that, right? I mean, as part of a purchase agreement, they're gonna require evidence that there is a letter of compliance. And if they let that drop for whatever reason, I mean, there could be issues, right?
Yeah, so I think your motion should just be then, so long as there's a valid letter of compliance. And this decision, it can be recorded with the property too, so it can be found during any title search. So any
Right.
potential buyers would find this restriction.
Because
And it would
otherwise we'd
apply
be doing
solely-
something for this that we do for nobody else, right?
Right, it would apply solely to this property.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So tell us what to say.
Yeah, we need a lawyer on this board. I think I've got it. I'm not making a motion. Let's talk language for a second. So I would say that we would be willing to judge that this is impractical for 3424 Woodland, that we would allow up to 5 adult occupants so long as there's a valid letter of compliance.
I don't think you need the last part of that phrase, as long as there's a valid letter of compliance.
Got it.
I think it's enough.
Okay.
Right? That's consistent with what your authority is.
Okay, sounds good.
Mhm.
Thank you.
Okay, would you like to read that again for our purposes here?
I feel like I need to swear an oath again. All right. Okay, so for the appeal on 4224 Woodland,
34.
for the appeal on 3424 Woodland, that the board deem the occupancy limit impracticable and that we would allow up to 5 adult occupants.
I second.
As long as a LLC.
Lawyer
Oh, she
advises
said no.
me,
Okay.
yeah, strike that.
Sorry.
Discussion on the motion? I think we've had the discussion on the motion.
Took longer to make the motion.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Against? The motion is carried.
Could I ask a clarifying question?
Yes.
Go ahead.
So in the city documents, it will be changed to a 5-bedroom home. So if somebody looked it up, it'll be written that way, or will it stay as it is today?
I believe it's a 5-bedroom, 5-occupant home now. Is that correct?
Yeah, we'll change our records so that our software system shows 5 bedrooms and 5 occupants.
Perfect.
But again,
Okay.
to reiterate, the rental system is different than other systems, such as the system for tax assessment. So just to be clear, we're talking about just for the rentals.
Yep.
Okay, thank you. I appreciate the consideration, and we'll just do another inspection in 3 years and we'll move forward.
Thank you for your time.
Question that didn't get asked, I suppose is moot now, is have there ever been any complaints about this occupancy, that it's overcrowded, creates a problem in the community?
Just the initial complaint, when there were, I think, 5 people living there and someone filed a complaint with us. At that time, it wasn't registered. So we worked with the owner. They didn't know they had to register.
And that was before the construction took place.
Yep.
Right.
And he registered, did everything they needed to do. So, and as soon as they found out that there was an ordinance there and there were regulations, they've complied with them.
So it sounds as if everything is good.
We can move on.
Okay, to board or staff comments, you wanted to draft a letter to the city or to the county assessor?
No, I think I'm curious how the board feels about writing a letter to the city council, asking for them to consider giving us some other lever to pull when we feel like it's
Right.
appropriate. And I'm not saying that even the cases today necessarily warrant that lever, but we do seem to, let's say that we're in a ceiling situation, it's a half inch off, like I'm gonna be willing to give on a half inch ceiling difference, right? If it's like a giant room or something. But
If you're looking for a lever, it actually does exist. I just have to find it, of course. We can affirm the city's judgment. We can find it impracticable, which we just did.
that bar for impracticability is very high.
Yeah.
I think what you're asking is for a variance process
Mhm.
so that you don't
Right.
have to find yes or no. You can say, okay, in this situation, a half inch isn't going to reduce the level of safety. We'd like to be able to approve that.
Yes. And we don't have that ability today at all,
Correct.
correct?
And is that process, I thought you had a process related to variance.
No, I finally got to it.
Nope. So
There
we
is
can,
option 3.
in our office, issue like code modifications. So if there's practical difficulties, those are the things that we do that don't get to you.
Yeah.
So when there's no practical difficulties in changing something and somebody just doesn't want to do it or doesn't want to do it because it's a half inch off, we wouldn't approve that. So I think what you're saying is a variance where they could come in and have the code in this specific instance waived, if you will, and not apply as black and white as we would typically enforce it.
I believe zoning board of adjustment works in that capacity, right?
Correct.
We also have option 3. The Property Maintenance Appeals Board can modify the decision of the building official, provided that the modification does not otherwise violate the code. And that is pretty open-ended.
I don't know though. I mean, it's actually not, because I don't see any situation where these people are going to draft something up that doesn't follow the code, right? I mean, that's their job.
I think potentially a modification could be like if someone was requesting a time extension, let's say, and they wanted 90 days and we're saying 60, you could modify and say 75. That would be a
We couldn't
modification.
You want
do
to-
ceiling by half inch.
To come up with an answer that is not a yes or no answer, that does not violate the code. We have used that before. At one point in the past, it was dropped as an option, and I'm glad to see it comes back. It was restored on request.
But I think the
I'm very
point is
appreciative
that
for it.
those variances would technically be in violation of the code in its strict adherence, and that's where we are.
A variance would
Matt's
give a
feeling, like-
strong,
Right.
legally defensible, I think, way to deal with that. And my other question for this board is, do you even want that? Sometimes I think it's
So-
easier to just be like, I'm sorry, it's code says this.
I do feel like that creates more liability for us and I will say, like, I am a volunteer citizen. I do not have expertise in this area. I
That is
care about
correct.
this, but I'm not sure that I want that responsibility.
There is a reason it's called a quasi-judicial board.
If
Sure.
a variance process were to exist, I would prefer that it go through professional channels, somehow through the city or something. Folks who are actually trained on this to have better oversight of that process.
Would it be reasonable to at least approach in a letter, and we don't solution, we say, city council, we recommend that you think about this, because we feel like we don't necessarily have the ability to work with some of the situations that we encounter. And so not necessarily describing, and here's what we think you should do about it, but just say like, we would be interested in having some additional process be implemented that allowed for variance. And maybe then we can say that our recommendation would be their office handles that, and then appeals come to us or something like that.
And we have done that, like
In
we
fact, we have.
I'm thinking
Yes.
of the case we heard with the stairs and the slant of the stairs,
That's
the height
right.
of the stairs at the, one
Yeah.
step, it was like 2 inches. And it's impracticable to change the slant of the staircase and we allowed it.
Right.
So there is a little bit of that we have, said, but when you're talking about 4 inches across a huge space of a room, it's really about how the smoke collects and doesn't rise up. So, and that's how they have, once it's the 7 foot, it's like, if it hits 7 feet, then the square footage of the room, like in their room, if they did hit 7 feet, they probably would have hit because it was so big, the square footage potentially of a certain height would have been okay, but they didn't even,
You're talking about creating an open space at the bottom of the room where people can breathe.
yeah.
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 I'll say I think my current challenge is actually less about a variance process and more of, again, I feel like we have heard many of the same
Right.
type of appeal
Right.
due to differences in code, the different types
Would
of
it-
code we have. Again, I don't have appreciation for why there are differences in those codes, but it seems to be continually causing challenges. And so I'd either like to better understand those differences or figure out if there is a way for the city to address
And
that.
confusion on the part of the homeowners.
Yeah,
At the same time, like, I can understand the opposite side of not wanting to marry those, because again, one's a business operation and one is people's personal homes. And so like,
Well,
I
there's
can
nothing
understand
we
you
can
don't
do
wanna-
about the realty agent, getting the city and the county together. That might be,
Now, they should just have a class for all the real estate agencies on code if a person is buying for a rental.
So
I'm
we
saying you
have
can't
tried to reach out. I've met with realtors in the past to try to explain this, let them know that our office has a file for every single property and we want you to come look at it before you do anything.
Yeah.
So we've tried to get that information out. It doesn't always get funneled to the appropriate people. Just keep in mind that what the assessor does is for taxing purposes, not for safe, compliant
Right.
living spaces.
Right.
But I think what you're asking and what we could certainly do, you could write a memo to council, and I can help you with it, that would just ask staff to look into options or present how we can improve the process for marrying these things. We're probably never going to get them to be the exact same, but maybe we can increase our outreach efforts or something like that. We can come back with that. And then to your point, I think that you could do the same thing with a memo and request that staff look into additional options for the board. So the code says what you can appeal based on, right? So you would be asking essentially for another option to be added. When you send that to council, they will then turn around to staff and ask for a report and tell us what's going on. And we'll write a memo to them and explain. And if they go, oh, this sounds like a problem, then they'll ask us to do a little more and maybe come up with solutions. So it's a process, but you certainly have the right to ask them to have staff look into it. You could also, if you want me to write up a memo or something to you as the board, I could bring back kind of the history of what the assessor versus the inspections is and what we've done, just so you as a board have that all in writing.
That would be great. Because one of my big challenges at this point, I look to the lawyer for advice here. I feel like we are probably abusing the definition of impracticability to some degree on some of those cases where it's a little more narrow. And that's what has me nervous. And if I'm wrong, happy to hear that I'm wrong. But I mean, impracticability should be like, you could move a mountain and we could, that'd be the only way. Is
it
physically move
implies
a mountain.
physicality, and that's not what we were addressing today.
Sometimes another example of impracticability we've had is like you have a driveway and it's 2 inches
Right.
not wide enough. You can't add 2 inches to a driveway. You would have to.
The infamous 90-foot
You
driveway.
would have to,
that was 100 years
re-pour
old.
something.
That's a
completely.
fantastic example because impracticability, I think, would argue that it doesn't become impracticable until you literally cannot remove the driveway and widen it. Like if you are allowed to remove the driveway, start from scratch, put a new driveway in, I would say that's not impracticable.
But
And
cost,
make it, what was it, 6 inches wider, I think.
right, or 4
90-foot
inches wider or
driveway.
something like
Yeah.
that. But the cost to do it
Mhm.
is what's impracticable, because if you have
Right.
4 more inches or 2 more inches on your driveway,
I don't
it's not, you know what I'm saying? Like,
don't
it's-
love the comfort of like that we have to decide what dollar figure kind of goes on to whether or not something's impracticable. Which is why I'm kind of like, oh, I really love something more like a variance, because I feel dirty trying to decide like assessing values on those things. I'd rather say you're an inch off, it's fine. Here's a variance for your LLC. Stay in good standing with the city and we're happy. Like that's where I'm struggling a little bit. And again, if I'm the only person struggling with that, then cool. At a minimum, yes, I think we need to have the memo that helps us marry the city assessor and the rental kind of like,
Well-
we do have a problem there that needs.
Well, there are other reasons for appeal as well. Let's see here. In that case, the case we just decided, the homeowner checked impracticable. It's also, the code has been incorrectly interpreted. That might apply. Provisions of the code do not fully apply in this situation. That might apply. I propose an alternative method to meet the intentions of the code, which is open-ended, and additional time is needed to complete the required work. So there are other,
In a 1-inch driveway situation, which one of those do we say,
oh, that was definitely impracticable.
Okay.
Yeah,
It's funny because I
But-
as the landlord would be like, nah, that's not impractical. It's
Well, we-
expensive. That's not impractical.
we decided impracticable because the box was checked in this case. But the code has been incorrectly interpreted, I think would actually do better to explain
And
what we
again, I'm
did
not trying to
today.
talk about today's cases specifically.
Yeah,
The 1-inch driveway is an easy example to reach for, right? Because it's very expensive to resolve, very, very close to the code.
It usually when we're looking at something, I think if it's a safety matter,
Mhm.
then you're talking about the impracticability is really difficult to come up with, to say that you can't fix this or we should just not have a safe situation for somebody. But then there's things that we've heard that are not a safety issue at all in the expense wise versus something else. Like it really
Right.
doesn't matter in the whole big scope of things.
that's what the driveway was.
Right, that's what the driveway was, you
Plus the
know?
driveway was 100 years old, had been used for that period of time.
Right, and so, yeah, so it really is just case,
I mean, if we feel
by
like
case,
the
yeah.
impracticability hatch is a safe one to pull, that's great. I just want to make sure we're not.
I have struggled with that since I've joined this group. It is a subjective term, in my opinion, but I also think that is generally the case in these situations. That's why we do have this board with discussion. I don't think we will ever get to a position that is black and white. I think I do hear you that perhaps having an option that uses different language that it inherently suggests wiggle room might be better suited to some of the situations that we're hearing. I don't know if that's my immediate concern, to be honest,
No, that's fine.
because I think this has been the way the group has worked for a while. So I'm
Right.
inclined to tackle one thing at a time and figure out.
I guess because of that, I'm more comfortable with what we have now. We do have two open-ended options. And open-ended means you can pretty much tack on anything you can come up with, as long as it's legal.
I think then in that case, let's really focus on marrying rental data and the assessor data situations. And we can
You know,
maybe just a memo on that would be fantastic. And we can focus on at least that problem.
you know, what if, I mean, I wouldn't have to do the legwork of doing it, but, you know, on the assessor site, if there is just another box added that as a rental, anything that has been used as a rental in the past, as a rental, it's this many bedrooms. So it's like this many bedrooms there's in the house. As a rental, it's this. You know, just one more line so you can see the difference, because there are homes that go, they're rentals and they're not, then they're rentals again, right? You know, or the laws changed, you know, whatever. So if it's that, it would be easy to see, and it's just one, instead of trying to, well, if it's not a rental, if it's a rental, because they go back and forth sometimes, you know.
I'm assuming not all the records are digitized though at this point, right? Or would they be?
Well, and I think another thing just to remember is that to the extent that you've got discomfort or you feel that there's issues that have arisen, you don't necessarily have to solve them or even have a suggestion for a solution,
true.
right? I mean, it could just be that you have, Sarah writes this memo, you guys consider it next time, right? And you notify the council, hey, we've been having trouble with this, right? And then they can make a decision whether there is a fix, what the fix might be, things like that, right? Just basically saying, we feel like we have a problem.
Yeah, and then they would refer it back to staff and we can respond with, yeah, it does seem to be a problem. Here's what we're encountering. Here's potential solutions. There are no potential you know, whatever it might be, we would provide those back. And then it would go back to them again as a memo just for their information. So they don't even have to act on it. They can just say, oh, thanks for the information.
Yeah.
I'm supportive of that again, because you all are the ones who are living this on a daily basis. Like, I do think that
Right.
it's not our responsibility to fix this, but it does seem like it is a continual challenge. So I think it should be flagged as an observation for council. If you all can make them aware of that and act based on however they see fit, that would be great.
we need a motion for that?
I'm a little concerned because we didn't notice it as part of our agenda. So I guess my suggestion.
I can bring it back as a
Let's
new
just
item.
refer it, bring it back to the next meeting, and then they can approve it. You could tinker with Sarah's memo a little bit if you wanted to as well. Great. But I think we've got enough.
Is that agreeable?
Do
No.
you want to move forward? Do you want to move forward on the variance piece or?
There, just so you know, there's no problem with doing two at a time. If that's your holdup. and you
No,
wanna
no,
tackle
the
one
rest
at
of
a
the
time.
board, I think is very happy with the status quo, which makes me feel happy with the status quo. I just,
No.
because I haven't been on here long, I'm looking at a very strict definition and going, I don't know, but like, I think we all feel comfortable with using that or the other escape hatches that are there, and so I'm fine with that.
Now, I think what we're hitting is when there's an objection, almost everybody checks that first box, the impracticable box.
Yes,
Right.
yeah.
And that's not necessarily the best box to check. So I would recommend looking at the other ideas for the objection, reasons for the objection, and the three alternatives that we have, especially that alternative 3. I'm a big fan of alternative 3 because it is open-ended. And you can become creative as long as you don't violate the law.
I wonder if that's actually something, Eric makes a good point there. I get the feeling that possibly some of our appellates are misreading that as impractical and not impracticable. And I
Have
don't
no
know.
doubt.
Yeah, I wonder if
I
we
didn't know that was a word.
yeah, I didn't know that was a word before I came onto this board. I don't know if there's
It's much stronger than impractical.
when you, yeah, all right, impractible.
Right.
So when you're giving the appellates their buffet of options, I mean, are we giving them the definition of impracticable in
Right.
that buffet of options?
So.
Because you give it to us, I'm curious if they.
Yeah, no, and I would say that I try to help the appellants through the process and help them pick the one that would be most applicable. If I'm being honest, in some instances, I don't think any of these, like, they come to you sometimes, I'm like, there's no way this could actually be approved because it's not impracticable. We didn't misinterpret it. They're not arguing that we've misinterpreted it. There's not an alternate method. They don't need more time. They don't want more time. They just don't want to do it. So I feel that your variance process would capture, we really want people to be able to be heard, right? So we want to encourage them to go to the board if they feel something is wrong. But it seems like we're pushing people to go to the board when maybe they don't really have a chance, and we're trying to help them fill it out. And impracticable has been probably the most ambiguous term.
Right.
Where it gives you wiggle room. And so that's kind of what we've used. I think if there was the variance piece where I just don't want to do it, you could have, like, you could set up different criteria. It might, like ZBA, it's not, maybe remind me what they all are, but you have to show financial hardship. There's a whole bunch of criteria you have to show that you should be getting a variance for this.
They
So
have very strict standards for
Yeah.
every single possibility.
it's pretty strict. So, you know, we could add something to the code that allows you more leniency with that if council wanted to, right? So this would have to go to council. You would have to say you want another option because you feel like you can't really do much. They could add that to the ordinance. Again, same process. We would give them options. We'd tell them what's available. If we have any concerns about a variance and people just coming because they don't want to do something, I think you guys understand pretty well that having a rental property is not a right? So if they can't meet it, maybe it's just not suited to be a rental property. I think you understand that. So it's not like everyone that comes in here would just get a variance, right? You can set up the criteria, you know what's at stake. So I don't think it's out of line to ask for that. I think it's something that you could totally request. Not saying council will approve it. I don't know if they will or not.
So based on that, I guess I'm becoming more curious now about this option. I still maintain, I don't know if I agree that this board should be the one holding that power, but it seems to me like you all are also somewhat strong-armed in what you're, or that's probably not the right term. You don't have a lot of options in terms of how you can help in those
That's why the board is
situations.
here.
But we're not really, because we also can't help in those situations.
Well, and that's why I brought up zoning board of adjustment, right? I think structuring this board more similarly to zoning board of adjustment could be of benefit for the renters and rental owners of the city. And I'm not saying that I have any interest in rubber stamping approvals and variances all day long, but zoning board of adjustment has the ability to look at a situation and go, come on, and I just feel like by not having that, I actually haven't, to be clear, I don't think I've seen any cases where I feel like we couldn't do something that I thought was appropriate.
Exactly.
I think we've been fine,
Yeah.
but I don't want that time to come up in front of us and then we're like stymied and we really all believe that, it should have been fair and right for somebody to have the situation that they had and our hands are tied at that moment. I work in risk mitigation as my full-time job. So unfortunately, all I do all day long is think about situations that'll happen in 2 years. so that's kind of why I'm bringing it up, is because I just I'm starting to see that pattern. Regardless, though, like I do want to make sure that we're not conflating the two things that we went into about this. Like there's one about variances, and then again the other one where we still.
Yeah.
I think everyone's.
Yeah.
Just making sure we're clear on the separation there.
But it does seem to me that you all have thought about this before. I personally would like to hear more of your thoughts around what that could look like. I don't know if that's appropriate for us to ask or if that's something we push to council and they can decide if they want to.
I think we can treat it the same. I can bring you back information and then you can determine if it's something you like and you would like to send to council and have us look at more officially.
Okay.
You feel like you've got enough information now to draft something that sort of encapsulates.
Yeah, I think I understand the concerns. I know we have concerns too. Like I said, we do approve a lot of stuff that doesn't get to you. So I do have some administrative authority in like what we have window wells or egress window sizing. We've made some administrative decisions on those and we just write a little memo that goes with the property and it's not coming to you. So really those that come to you are those that we can't make administrative approvals for. So you have the hard job. So yeah, if you're interested in it, I could do the same thing, just a memo explaining what authority we currently have, what you currently have, and if you want something different, how you might go about that.
Seems like a healthy boundary definition anyway, so probably good to do that.
Yeah, I get the feeling, and I'll stop talking after this, but as we've done several of these, I can't help but notice that whatever official did the rental inspection, there are situations where you clearly feel like you want the owner to get a release valve. Like you feel bad for them. I can see it in your face sometimes. Like you feel bad for them. You want us to kind of give them that relief from time to time. I can kind of feel that. And like I don't like if you guys feel that way, I would love for you just to be able to approve it. Like it's kind of bananas that if you guys, I think in many situations, feel like it's reasonable. Yeah, I just want council to give you guys that power. I would rather be hearing about people we said no to than people that you wish you could have said yes to. Like that is.
I think that's why the board is here, because the options of the city are limited.
Yes, but like again, come back to zoning board of adjustment. Like the zoning has a lot more authority to like approve things in certain circumstances because they've written all out, right? The code has all of these exits for them. It's been a long time since I read it, so I'll remind myself, but it has several exits for them. And then if the rejection happens, zoning board of adjustment kicks in, right? Like I feel like we can't even get to the part where they can like authorize several exceptions because it just feels like they don't have the power to authorize even some very basic exceptions. And I'm not an expert. I'd rather them tell me if it's something should or should not be approved. Like, but I can, we can look in their eyes and see they're saying like, we kind of think you should allow this one through. It's pretty ridiculous, but like, they can't say that. And I that's a weird position to be in.
Yeah, and it's, I think of note too, this ordinance was adopted in 2009. At that time, the board was created and these rules were adopted. And how they got there, I don't know if they copied another city. I don't know how they got there. So I think looking into it, there's nothing wrong with that. Maybe it's time to update them based on what we've been seeing.
All right, I'm done talking.
Any further comments? Then I declare this meeting of the Property Maintenance Appeals Board adjourned.
Thank you, Eric.
Thank you all.